This is the Holyrood Sources podcast. Thanks so much for being with us today. Right, let's welcome Kenny MacAskill, the newly elected leader of the Alba Party. Kenny, welcome to the podcast.
Good morning, thank you.
How are you feeling? How's the first couple of weeks of leadership been? Do you feel like you've got a grip on the party, that you've set a direction for the party? What is it?
Well, I think the party's in good heart. We were obviously stunned, as indeed was the country, by Alex's tragic passing back last October. But we continued, we kept the show on the road. We've had a very successful conference. We've had our first meeting of the new NEC. So the new team, the new leadership is going forward. And we're building on a very substantial legacy that Alex left to take forward the message.
What word would you use to describe the leadership contest? Because the one that I found most in the coverage was fractious. It was a fractious contest. Would you use that word? Would you use a different word?
No, I mean, I've been involved in contests, both electoral, internal and indeed external, since 1982. This was far from rumbustious. I think it was different from others, but at the end of the day, these things are said or happen in every contest. It's been minor to some of the elections I've been through.
Yeah, I suppose politicians always say that, though, don't they, Kenny? That's just a way out of something that was difficult. There was allegations of bullying and harassment and difficulty within all of this.
Well, that was certainly left field, but that was a matter we were obviously constrained by legal advice at the time. But the National Executive Committee has dismissed for gross misconduct the previous General Secretary. That's a matter of public record. That was following legal guidance, and I stand by that decision. I did actually make that decision because I recused myself as was felt appropriate.
Yeah, okay. I suppose then we come on to where you are as a party. So at the general election last year, there were 19 candidates for the Alba Party, winning a combined 11,784 votes. You've got a year to go, just over, till the next Scottish parliamentary election. Realistically, will Alba have electoral success at Holyrood this time next year?
I think we'll break through, and you're right, correct. The elections that we've contested have not been successful, but this strategy is predicated on a strategy that was prepared by Alex for 2021. That would have allowed for Alba to be elected in the list, to have created a supermajority, as it was for a variety of factors: the backdrop of COVID, the hostility of Nicola Sturgeon, the overhang of the court case that Alex had sadly faced. All have meant that Alba didn't break through. Had Alba broken through, then Scotland would be in a better place. I don't think we would have had the Butte House Agreement, the SNP Green Coalition and all the tragedy there. And I think what we're also realising is that movement of the Yes movement, the independence movement, that's been rather gone, off the boil. People have put their feet up. Others have decided that it wasn't coming, and basically there's other things to do with their time. As spring is coming back, there's a spring coming back in the step of the independence movement. They are not satisfied with what's being delivered in Holyrood at the present moment, and I think Alba offer that opportunity, and that's why a vote for Alba on the list is a vote for independence, and I think the independence movement is beginning to take that on board and to recognise that.
So Kenny, can I ask about the strategy you suggested? It was that the same one that Alec adopted in 2021, which is essentially saying to the SNP voters, don't waste your vote on the list because they ain't going to get any list votes if current polling trajectory is going to be realised. So one thing I do think you have in your favour in that respect is the personality is no longer there. Alec is tragically no longer with us. Nicola's taken a clear decision to move and to step down from politics. So without those two personalities and the well-documented rivalry, for want of a better word, there, gone, do you anticipate getting a better response from John Swinney?
I don't necessarily expect to get a better response from the SNP leadership. I think the SNP leadership will always argue for SNP1 and SNP2. That's a vested interest for those that are candidates there, and indeed lingering perhaps hostility to Alba. But I think there's three sections that we could go for. First of all, there is the independence support that in the main does vote to the SNP, but who recognise, as you say, that on the D'Hondt system, a vote for the SNP is actually just going to return unionists on the list. That's the first aspect, probably the main aspect, but there's also a section of society now, almost a third it would appear, of independent supporters who don't support the SNP, some of whom are looking for a home, some of whom might not vote unless they can be persuaded, if you don't want to vote in the constituency, at least vote for Alba for independence on the list. And there's also a third section, people who have tried Labour, tried the SNP, gone back to Labour, who are dissatisfied, not perhaps necessarily committed to independence, most certainly not committed to reform, dissatisfied with the establishment, and who are looking for something perhaps more radical and continuing the drive that they believe is necessary. So I think it's those three sections: SNP, independent supporters who are not SNP, and a radical version of society who want to see Scotland improve, because the tragedy in Scotland is we're under-delivering and yet have huge opportunities.
Yeah, can I just have one quick follow-up before Andy, I'm sure, will come in? But kind of, I thought one of your speeches recently, and I paraphrase slightly, but you kind of intimated that we can't just be seen as, criticising the SNP all the time. And I thought that was actually quite sensible, because fundamentally, if you're to attract people to vote SNP on constituency and then Alba on the list, you need to have better relations, or at least seemingly being a more accommodating towards that scenario. So is that going to be a feature of your leadership? Are you going to be more constructive in criticism, perhaps, and actually keep your troops in line on that strategy?
Yes, I think so. I think the situation, Alec always tried to do that. It was obviously poisoned to some extent by the events related to Nicola Sturgeon. But I think, the position that I adopt is I've still got many good friends in the SNP. I disagree, with the leadership on many issues that they've taken. I recognise the good things they've done. The Scottish Child Payment is praised by me. It's praised more importantly by Danny Dorling. There are issues, though, that fundamentally they have to accept ownership of. The failure on the ferries, other aspects, the failure on the ScotWind sell-off, the failure to deliver, for our oil and gas sector, and indeed to maximise the renewable benefits. So we'll challenge on issues. But at the end of the day, we're an independence party, we're an independence movement, and we will always support, another independence party when we're not available. You might say that they're our B team, we're our A team, but, we accept the right to criticise them, and that will remain. But I do know that there have been some who have been in independence and are in the independence movement who now have huge hostility towards the SNP. I don't think that serves anyone any benefit. There are good people there. We have to work together. You have the right to challenge, but at the end of the day, there's far more that unites us than divides us.
Kenny, just on this particular theme, I want to put this question to you from Elaine in Dumbarton, one of our listeners, who says, a question for Kenny. Since there are far more folk who support independence than support the SNP, do you think it would be wise for the SNP to reach an agreement with all other indie supporting parties to field candidates on the list? Elaine says voting SNP 1 and 2 makes no sense. However, what's the option for indie voters if the SNP don't sign up to this? Many independent supporters, including me, says Elaine, couldn't bring themselves to vote SNP if they haven't reached an agreement with other parties.
Yes, I agree with Elaine. This is an offer that we've made before at previous elections and would still stand. At the end of the day, if we can unite the movement, if we can agree, and it's not just the SNP, there are other parties and indeed others who are not in any party. So I think Elaine is right, but as with previous instances, the SNP have refused that. We will try again, but I think what Elaine is directing is the correct way to go. But if the SNP don't, then our position remains that the list vote should certainly go for Alba.